Vad är egentligen skillnaden mellan att lösa problem och att verkligen utvecklas som människa? I dagens avsnitt av Khraft-podden möter vi Lori Schock, absolut en av pionjärerna inom coaching. Hon har över 30 års erfarenhet, har en MCC-certifiering, det vill säga Master Certified Coach, och har lång erfarenhet av att utveckla ledare, team, coacher världen över. Vi är glada över att vi har Lori med i ett samtal idag, och jag kommer att prata med Lori om coachingens resa från okänd metod på 90-talet till att ha blivit en global bransch idag. Vi kommer också att prata om det som kanske riskerar att gå förlorat längs vägen. Vad är egentligen transformativ coaching och vad är skillnaden mot att jobba transaktionellt? Varför är det så viktigt att vi jobbar transformativt? Och här kanske inte AI kommer att kunna ersätta oss. Vad tror du? Jenny Berg heter jag driver Khraft-podden. Den här omgången så har vi en intervju och den kommer att vara på engelska. Men jag har god tro till att du kommer att hänga med ändå. Avsnittet kommer att handla om modet att inte ha svaren, om att stå emot våra mänskliga impulser att vilja fixa och hjälpa varandra. Istället skapa utrymme för transformation, för varandras utveckling. Välkommen! Welcome to my podcast, which is about leadership and coaching, and I'm really happy to have Lori Schock Svensson here. Who are you, for those who don't know you?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jenny. I'm really excited to be here. I love these kind of conversations. So my name is Lori Schock. I am American. I'm from California. I left the States 20 plus years ago. I lived in a few different countries, and I'm currently living in Norway. I started coaching 30 years ago. And a couple of years after I started coaching, I was invited to be a trainer for the Coaches Training Institute, now known as the Coactive Training Institute, or CTI. I'm sure I'll be mentioning that a few times, CTI. And I have learned so much through coaching and coach training, so much about myself and so much about human nature, which I love. I've tapped into neuroscience a lot as well. I mean, the science that's coming out, the research that's coming out about how our brains work, how our emotional brains are driving our behaviors, and how stress is really holding us back from what from our best selves and things like that, I think is really, really important work. So I've dabbled a lot in that, worked with systems coaching as well. So I've been a trainer for CRR Global, working with systems coaching. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's a lot of experience there. And I knew this when I asked you. It would be great to have a talk and chat with you about the history of coaching, because you've been since the beginning almost. I think you started, as you said, 96, and I know CTI started 92, and it's not far from where the positive psychology and John Whitmore and Tim Galloway and all these guys got together. So you've been all the way, and that makes me curious. Looking back on your coaching journey, what experience have most shaped your understanding of what powerful coaching truly is?
Well, I certainly have lots of experiences with one-to-one work with clients and the kind of transformations and changes they could make. But I think some of the most powerful experiences are actually in training coaches and doing some demonstrations in front of a room. 15-minute demonstration in front of a room. There's also the work that you do with all the people and using the coaching concepts on the people in the room, but a 15-minute demonstration where people can learn about themselves, something specific about themselves, and shift that and be witnessed by a number of people. There's something so powerful about that. It's always had me be even more committed to using the tools. Because a lot of coaches learn coaching tools and then they go back to their problem-solving selves or their expert-giving mentor selves. But those experiences really had me commit to, just using the coaching tools because they work. They're powerful.
And it is definitely something, me as a coach trainer as well, definitely it is something to be training other coaches. When you're teaching others, you learn yourself a lot.
Yes, best way to learn is to teach, some people say, and I totally agree. And it's also, it's about staying connected to the tools and not forgetting them and really learning them deeply. And
and answering all those questions that comes along as well with all the students. But what have the profession has developed over these 30 years? And of course, there is a big difference 30 years ago from where we are now. What are the biggest changes in this profession, you think?
I think, well, I remember that nobody knew what coaching was 30 years ago. And so part of the job of being a coach was to educate people about what coaching is and isn't. And that was part of what we talked about with participants and students is how do you talk about this thing? And now a lot of people in the world know what coaching is. They might have some ideas that are not quite right about coaching. So there is still a little bit of training people what coaching is, but I feel like coaching has become way more mainstream and a lot of people already know a lot about coaching. They know what to expect from a coach. They've had coaches before. So you work with people who've been through a coaching process before, especially in organizations. In organizations, there's a lot of organizations have coaching departments, which is really exciting. I mean, that wasn't happening 30 years ago. So that's a big development that I've seen.
I know you started your career being an engineer. Do you think that you would have stayed as an engineer if you had had a coaching on that company?
Well, that is a great question. I think what would have happened, I would have stayed as an engineer, but I would have shifted. I was working for the military, so I was a civil servant working for the military. But if I'd had a coach and I'd had the right kind of training, I think I might have ended up working in biotech, which I have still a lot of passion for. And my master's degree has some digital signal processing, which can be used for like building hearing aids and this and that. And I was studying bioengineering for a while. So I think if I'd had coaching, I probably would have shifted into the corporate world and the biotech, which was happening in San Diego, huge biotech areas in San Diego, probably become a leader in one of those organizations. That's what I imagined for myself if I'd had coaching, because I wanted to work with people, and the role models just weren't there in the organization that I was working for. They had to promote people who were technical experts into leadership roles, and they didn't know anything about developing people, and that ignited my passion for wanting to do that also. Way back when,
but way back then you actually just met someone or something that told you about coaching. What's happened there?
Well, I wasn't happy doing the work I was doing. I was working for the military. I wasn't really excited about what they were up to, and while and the work was interesting headwise, it just wasn't heartful. And so I was looking for what else could I do, and I was doing lots of investigation of myself. I was part of an organization where we were doing a lot of meditation and yoga and learning Eastern philosophy, and that was appealing to me. And there was no jobs in that I could see, other than being a yoga instructor. And then suddenly 2 people showed up in my world that were doing this thing called coaching. And I found out what they were doing. And then I said, that's it. I'm doing that. And I declared myself a coach.
Wow, that's really good. And then you started with CTI and also became an instructor, as we talked about later. Well, in your view, what distinguishes truly transformative coaching? Because we could divide coaching into transformative coaching and transactional coaching, which it's more on a surface level. What do you think? What distinguishes those two?
Yeah, well, for me, coaching should be transformational, and it defaults to transactional. And I define those as transactional as, okay, what are you going to do? Let's problem solve. What's the problem? What's your challenge? Let's problem solve it. Let's figure out a way forward. Maybe even problem solving from the coach, or asking the client, but only staying on the transactional kinds of things they can do. Transformational is going within and helping. I have this gesture I use that here's the client and this is their challenge over here. And this is maybe the problem they need to solve. And if we focus here, we're going to be doing transactional coaching. What's the problem? How are you going to address it? What will you do next? What are the things you need to do? But coaching should be over here. Here's the human being. Help that human being, the client, hold this thing in a different way. How can you see it differently, hold it differently? How do you need to develop your inner self, your thinking patterns, your self-confidence, your trust in yourself, so you can handle this thing better? To me, that describes the difference between transactional and transformational.
Transactional is the problem you are holding in your hands, and transformational is working with yourself.
Yes. And when you work with yourself, you can handle so many more different topics.
Areas. Yeah. And also it makes a huge change, maybe. I was reading at your homepage, shuksvensson.com, and you have a terrific blog, and you're really generous with a lot of material. And I read the following about the inner work, and the coaches need to do inner work, and I totally agree with you. We have our own story in Learn Coaching, where we found out, listening to coaches, that the essence is about actually being in contact with your inner compass, and that's the core of what we believe. So I love what you write here. You write like this: it isn't necessary to have traveled the same road as your client. That is my comment. That is, many people think that the coach needs to have traveled the same road.
Yes.
But that's not the essential, that it's essential that you traveled your own road and broken through some of your own internal roadblocks by shifting how you see and interact with the world. It's beautiful. I love it. Please comment.
Yeah, well, it's about knowing the transformational side of the work we do as opposed to the transactional side. So if we haven't had our own transformation experiences, it's hard to know what that is, and hard to help people have it themselves, help clients have it themselves. So yeah, I don't know how else to describe that other than, well, the other thing I'd like to say on this is that it's a human tendency to want to solve problems. Yeah. It's also a human tendency. I mean, we're designed that way to problem solve, to see what's wrong or not, not the best, and then to go fix that. We're fixers. So if we haven't had the experience ourselves as coaches to overcome that tendency, we're going to keep doing that. We're just going to keep trying to solve the problem for the clients. That's step number one. I think I'm talking about several things all at the same time. So
yes.
I hope so the coach needs to do their own personal work.
Yeah.
First step, overcome that tendency to problem solve.
Yeah. And the coach who do transactional or get stuck in the transactional thinking and coaching, I believe that they are stuck also in some of our natural instincts. And you were talking about that before when we were talking. Can't you say something about that? Because I think you were really, what are the instincts?
Yeah, so one of our instincts is to problem solve. Think of the gaming industry and how much people how much of their time they dedicate to playing games. We play games because we like to solve things. We like to succeed through problem solving. It's our human nature to do that. You sit down with a friend and the friend presents a problem immediately. We're like, do this, do that, and I just, having dedicated so much time to overcoming problem solving, I can't stand it when people do that. But that's our tendency, right? To like, it's like this. I can see it clearly from outside. Sometimes it's easier to see it clearly, our version of their problem, which is not their version of their problem. So that's a human tendency to problem solve. Another human tendency is to tell stories. We've only had, we learned through storytelling, humans did, through eons, and we've only had written word for a short time. So storytelling is part of our nature. And so when we get into a coaching session and we start asking about the story and what happened then and what happened, we've jumped in to the story as opposed to staying out here and helping the client see themselves and how they're behaving in their story. We need to focus our attention on how's the client behaving in their story, like soft focus on the story instead of jump into it and be so interested. That's what movies and books and films are for, and TV programs, you know.
And the coach who has been working with themselves have easier to stay outside the narrative, is my experience.
Yeah, so we need to learn about these tendencies that we have and overcome them. It's totally possible to overcome them.
Definitely.
But I think we need to admit that they are tendencies.
When it comes to your own personal development, you were saying that to learn to hold back, what are you learning about that? What have you learned about?
When I started coaching, I was still an engineer. I was partly engineer, partly coaching, and the shift was really, really noticeable. Like one day a week I'd be coaching, another I'd be, but I was still bringing my problem solving self at the beginning. And so I started recognizing that. I was, I'm trying to analyze and problem solve. And I still can do that, but I know it's not the best approach for the clients to have me sitting there going, here's what I see and here's what I'm figuring out for you. Is that right? And, so yes, that was a big part of my journey, is recognizing when I'm falling into problem solving mode. I was doing this team coaching just a few weeks ago. I noticed, the team was I'm helping them. I'm there helping them work well together, and that's my focus. And they had this long period of time where they were working on their leadership principles, and I started hopping into that. It sucked me right in, like working on the leaders. Like, here, I heard you say this, and I was in their story. And I just go, I need to back off and hold the team as opposed to jump into their problem solving.
Oh, I love that you say that, because it's a continuous learning to be in coaching.
Absolutely.
You can't give up. You always have to learn.
Yeah. And I said to many students of coaching, if at beginning, when they first come to what is, a first program, what is coaching? I like to say, if you're not interested in your own personal development and facing your demons and facing your habits and all that, then this profession is not for you.
That's very good stated. I agree totally. Well, the coaching field and industry is growing rapidly. Some say that it's one of the fastest growing industries in the world. Maybe they're on second place. What do you see as the biggest opportunities and risks for the profession right now?
Two things come to mind.
Yeah.
One is the industry that's the marketing industry that's developed around the coaching industry. And the other is AI. And they both have opportunities and, downsides, both of them. So AI can be used as an opportunity. So let the AI do the transactional stuff. Build a program, build an agent that can support your clients. Do the introspective work. We still need to do some accountability kind of work and help them stay on track, some of the transactional things that are built on top of the transformational shifts. But maybe AI can take over that and we can just focus more on the transformational side. So I think there's some possibilities there. Some of what I think is happening is that AI folks are trying to build AI agents that take over coaching, which I don't think they're ready for yet. I don't think they might ask the right questions, but I don't think an AI tool can't feel what you feel from a client. And we work with feelings all the time. So I think that's a risk to that could be a risk to coaching, is that there's so much, so many AI tools that people find beneficial that they then default to using those instead of hiring a coach. So there's some kind of risk there. But AI gives us some opportunities and risks.
Yeah.
In the whole
and
world,
I think
right?
Also because you don't know what the transformational coaching would give you instead. You don't have a comparison. So you don't really, you think this is good. The AI coaching is good, but what would the other thing give me actually? You don't know that.
Yeah,
and that's our problem to kind of describe.
Yeah,
What
and
were
maybe
your-
that comes back to the marketing.
yeah.
There's a lot of, I don't know, I'm sure you get them too. There's so many LinkedIn messages. Oh, I love your profile and love what you're doing. Let's connect. And then the next thing, if you do connect, the next thing is, I can help you build a coaching practice and get you so many new clients and da 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 da. Da. And I'm sure it's working for some people. And it's the people who market well that build the reputation of the industry. Because if you market well and you sell well, doesn't matter if you're a good coach or not, you sell well and you have clients because they buy your message. And then you could be a terrible coach. But that's what people learn coaching is. So this to me is a huge risk of all this marketing, and take a course for a weekend and learn how to coach. And then you're doing transactional coaching or maybe just dangerous coaching by problem solving for people when you have no business problem solving. And then that's who the coaches are in the world. And people learn, well, that's what coaching is. I find that scary. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I agree. I agree totally. And or also a bit frustrated myself when it comes to how can I make it clear that the effect is so much more with transformational coaching and with someone who has experience than any coach done 2 days of a course.
Yes.
Or I.
Yes.
So we need to get better in describing that effect, I think. Telling our customers. And we were talking about educating our customers before about coaching, what is it? And I can feel that now it's more about, okay, what is a quality coach doing actually with what they know and all the work they've done to be at that level?
Yeah. And they're doing transformational coaching, and you can say that to people, but it doesn't mean anything unless they've experienced it. So it's getting people to experience that. I've had several corporate clients. Seems to happen with corporate clients who are assigned a coach, and you take them through some self-understanding, and all of a sudden they feel like they're a whole new person, and it's so exciting to watch that. I mean, you couldn't have told them that was going to happen. I mean, you could have told them, and they wouldn't have the feeling of it.
No, they need to experience it. Definitely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So now we're talking about quality and credibility. How can we maintain that in this same time when we're expanding the industry? Have you any thoughts about that?
I have thoughts. I just don't know. I mean, there's the coaching professions, of course, that, or the professional bodies, like the International Coaching Federation, European Mentor and Coaching. What is the second C for? Council?
I don't know.
EMCC?
EMCC. I always say EMCC.
We always say EMCC. Yeah. Sorry, EMCC. And there's several others, and having, they're great. They need to, we need them. And yet a lot of coaches don't want to come into those organizations. Like, what am I paying for? Is often the question I hear. And, coaching can be so many different things. And the coaching professions are trying to align us into, let's have a alignment about what we're doing in this profession. And of course, that puts boundaries and sort of limitations on people. And if they want to do their own thing, they're not going to follow those limitations. They're not going to be part of that movement. They're going to go off and do their own thing, which they can because there's no laws against that. So we've got people doing all kinds of things and having a great time, and clients benefiting from it, but it's not aligned altogether. So I think it's really hard to maintain quality and credibility when a lot of people are doing a lot of different things. So I both think it's great that people are doing a lot of different things, and I also think there's people doing a lot of different things that do a disservice to the profession. So it would be helpful if we all decided, well, let's align on what we mean by coaching, and follow that and discipline ourselves a little bit to be doing that.
And Norway and some other countries, I know South Africa, Italy and Australia as well, have made a coaching standard for their country.
Yes.
And you have just been through it in Norway. We have been part of that process as well. And it's well, it's an interesting process to actually be several different coach federations or for the professional bodies who meet together and put together a standard. Do you have a view on that, or what's your experience of that
Well,
process?
I do think it's great that the professional bodies work together. Because if you have one over here doing this and one doing that, then we're definitely not aligning coaching. And what is coaching in the world? So having a collective agreement and alignment around what the standards are, I think is really healthy.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic that they're working together, because it felt like there was a little competition between the coaching bodies, and that's just not helping the profession. So it's great that they're working together and creating one standard. And of course, there will be people who want to push against those standards because they've developed themselves to do some unique things.
Yeah, that's quite obvious. And maybe that process is actually good. Working with it together about the standard. I have on my wish list that it should be an ISO standard within coaching worldwide. That would be great, maybe.
Yeah, and so the thing that comes up for me when I hear ISO standard, it feels like it comes back to forcing coaches to be transactional, because you do this and you do that. So how do you ISO standardize transformational coaching where the coach needs to be doing some magical kind of things within themselves and shifting their way of thinking? I mean, so I think that's difficult.
Is it possible? Yeah. Is it possible? I think the ICF's own core competencies are really, really good, actually.
I think the way they've evolved in the recent paths, in the recent few years, has shifted from something that felt transactional to me to something much more personal development oriented and transformational. So that's been exciting to see that set of competencies, coaching competencies, evolve in that way.
What do you like most with the new ones? I think it's since 2019 now, the new ones.
I was thinking that was something even newer, but I feel like I'm still adapting to them, and I'm hearing that new ones are coming again. We talked earlier, and I think you mentioned the word partner. And I love that. Partner is showing up in a lot of the competencies. Partner with your client. Talk about what you're doing. Tell them what you're doing. That's been one of my big things in training coaches is if you ask a question and the client doesn't understand you, tell them. Partner with your client. Tell them what you're trying to do, where you're trying to take them. Give them some context. That's part of adult learning theory also, is like tell people, why are you asking this question? Know what you're doing with your tools and set a little context for why you're heading in a particular direction and what you're wanting for the clients. I'm asking you what you feel in your body. I mean, that's been one question that I've said, what do you feel in your body? Which is really confronting for a lot of people if they don't understand why you're asking that.
Yes.
It's very invasive, actually.
It is. It is. It's quite, and a little bit out there question as well.
Absolutely.
In many ways.
Absolutely.
I also love the core competence too, where they have put a lot of emphasis on the coach's own work with themselves.
Yes.
To be open, flexible, and work with themselves. It's really, really good. So new ones are on its way, maybe.
I think so.
Again. So that is probably cool. The other thing that is happening in nowadays that I didn't see 20 years ago is that leaders tend to go our courses.
Yes.
A lot more. And leadership has made a journey from being the expert, answering all questions at work, but to being the one who facilitates experts and is responsible for the learning within the organization. So what do you see about the role of coaching evolving within organizational leadership development in the coming decades?
Yeah, Google did a study some years ago. I'm now forgetting the name of that. Oxygen, I think, was the study. And it came out with like, what are the qualities of leaders? And they were going for the transactional things and then realized, no, it's something else. But they found that coaching was like the number one skill that leaders need to learn, because we are shifting. The world is shifting in a lot of places. some places it's shifting back. But moving from the autocratic top down, do it like this, let me tell you what to do, let me solve the problems and you go do it, to more empowerment, where you hire experts and you trust them to follow their expertise rather than thinking you need to know what they're doing in detail. Hire those experts, trust them, but also help them, as a leader of someone like that, as a leader of an expert, the leader conversation is different. It's about how can I support you, as opposed to here's what you need to do. How can I help you communicate your ideas better, for example? Let me help you with that part, because sometimes technical experts don't always communicate their ideas really well. So there's more human-based, of course, they're all human qualities, less technical, more soft skills that leaders can help their people learn. They can role model those. Yeah. So that's just one example of how I think leadership is changing. And the leaders need to overcome some of the human tendencies also. So that human tendency to problem solve. Pause yourself, see if that person has an answer. Empower them. When someone comes up with their own solution, they are way more likely to follow through and be excited about it and motivated than if you tell them what to do. That comes from research, so let them have the space to come up with their ideas, and then they run with it much more often, so learn to manage that tendency, learn to manage the ego of, oh, wow, they're an expert and I don't know what they're doing. How dare I be their leader? It's not about that technical. You have to develop the technical expertise in order to manage them. So it's personal development for the leaders as well.
Yes, and actually the leader has to do a lot of that work that we do, the inner work with themselves and the work with others' inner work. So they really become coaches much more. I think when we talked before, you put it in words so nicely, how it's not like leadership is on the one side and it's separate from the coaching.
That's right. I've done a lot of coach training in organizations, and we have a tendency to have black and white thinking, and the managers are thinking, okay, managers and leaders, okay, so I have to stop using my managerial tools completely and only ask questions. Well, that's a problem. It's not going to work that way. There needs to be a blend. So there's let's call it manager hat. Yeah. Here's your task. How can I help you get to the end goal? And set timelines and direction and all that, managerial tasks. And then there's the coaching part. Like, how do I support this person to become who they need to be, to develop as a professional? That's a different leadership, I think, is the collection of those two, the combination of those two.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Being able to support the human being as well as do some of the structural managerial kind of functions.
Facilitate what happens in the organization. And about facilitating, I know that you have a program that is called Alchemy. And before we end this conversation, we need to talk about Alchemy, because you told me before that you had a co-facilitator and you were really good at what you did and created some magic in the room, and that started that you started to train others. So what is Alchemy all about? This is something for all coaches and co-facilitators.
Yes. So I started co-facilitating, co-training, co-leading for the Coaches Training Institute 28 years ago. And I didn't know much, but I kept looking at what makes this work, this co-facilitation relationship work. And this partner that I work with, Jim Patterson, he and I were kind of of the same mind, and we somehow naturally figured it out. But we broke down, what is it that works when these relationships work and when training works? So the Alchemy program is two different things. It helps a solo or a co-facilitator to understand how learning happens, experiential learning. Humans need to learn, adults need to learn through experience. And in order to do that, they need to be set up for success. So given the tools in order to try something, have a model of that, because mimicry is the fastest way to learn. So if they're seeing the leader trainer in front of the room do something in a correct way, they are more likely to be able to do it themselves, because they can just copy in a way, but also the mind needs to be satisfied. What are the steps of a tool, that kind of, and then set them up for success, have them go do the thing, whatever it is you're training them in, and then come back and talk about it. And it's that conversation that solidifies the learning. It's not the actual activity. The activity is essential. Their experience of it is essential, but the language they put with it afterwards, and neuroscience agrees with this, that it solidifies their learning in their brain when they can talk about it, when they can own it, they can figure out what is it I just did, and I can name it. So if they can talk about it, they're going to be better able to remember it and implement it again in the future. So that's one aspect of alchemy. And the other is, how do co-facilitators work well together? If you have two people in front of the room doing slightly different things, it's irritating and distracting. So we need to be on the same page. Co-facilitators need to be on the same page, aiming towards the same outcomes. And that's critical. Something might happen in a room that's unexpected. And if we're committed to our same, both committed to the same outcomes, we can use whatever is in the room. It's all improv work. We can use what's in the room, ditch our original design, but because we're committed to the outcomes, we can play with what's there. And we both know what we're doing, even though we're making it up in the moment, because we are committed to the same outcome. And so alchemy is a lot about getting the partners aligned, having them not be irritated with one another, but, really develop that relationship, because the energy here in this co-facilitation relationship is contagious. And we need to be conscious and intentional, like what kind of energy we put in a room, which is so it's appropriate for the work that we're going to do. If you were talking about a dance class you took, if there's co-facilitators, they doing boogie woogie, they need to have some boogie woogie attitude. If they're training people in meditation, they would have different attitude and a different energy to the space. But we don't think about it that much. What's the energy we need for this activity? And how are we creating it together? Or how are you creating it individually?
I like the question about energy. And then I think, you're experienced, you do a lot of work, you probably also struggle sometimes. So what is the first thing you do when you discover, we are struggling here, my co-facilitator and me?
Well, we need to talk about it, name it. Something's off. We're human beings, so we also get triggered and our nervous systems get activated, and stuff happens. So we need to tend to our relationship and find out what's going on and adjust. Maybe we need to take a break and go work on it and come back. I can't say I've taken a break in the middle of something in order to do that, but I've certainly on a break time said, let's figure out what's going on here. And what happened? Oh, maybe I said something that offended my and I was completely oblivious, or maybe there was a misinterpretation, or, something happened, but we need to address it ourselves.
And not wait.
And not wait till the end of the day or the end of the course and give feedback. It has to be worked on in the moment, because that energy lives there. If there's, something going on, it leaks.
I think this is a really exciting area, because myself, I learned so much about myself co-facilitating, because you can't hide anything. It's just there.
The other thing we're bringing into alchemy more and more, is about power differences. Because there's always some kind of power difference. Maybe one of the co-facilitators, they're going to co-coach, let's say, a team coaching. And one of the facilitators owns the coaching relationship with the company. And maybe the other facilitator is more experienced. This happens a lot. Hey, I've got a new client, you experienced person, come work with me. We've got two different kinds of power dynamics going on there. One of the, I've got the power because I own the client, and the other is I've got the power because I know more about what we're doing. And if that's not worked on or talked about, that can be a power struggle then.
Yeah, definitely.
And one person deferring to another creates some funky kind of energy in the room. So there's a lot more being added into alchemy around power and differences and working across them.
And I see we're end of time, but we need to just put this in as well about the listening, because there's so many levels of listening here when you're co-facilitating.
Yes. And that's one of the I mean, this is one of the surprising things we need to learn how to do as a human being, as a leader, as a coach, and as a co-facilitator.
Yeah.
Sometimes, newer co-facilitators I've been bringing up, they're focused on what's on the timeline and what's going to happen next. That they might not have heard something I said, like, oh, we're going to do this. And then they come and they say something different or contradict me or say the same thing, not to build on, but just because they didn't hear. So it's really critical to hear. That's what's been said, whether I like it or not, that's what's in the room. And this is why improv is so helpful, because you can only be where you are and create from there. So that's been said. What do I do with that? Maybe I underline what they've said. Maybe I take it in a slightly different direction consciously without making my co-facilitator wrong, because that energy is in the room also. So listening is really key.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And to be sure on my own, or be safe in my own role. What is my role here? Yes. What should I aim for? Yeah. So we're in the end of the podcast. It has been a terrific morning to have this conversation with you, Laurie. I'm really grateful that you could take the time. What are you taking with you this morning from this conversation?
Well, one, that it was a great conversation, and thank you, Jenny, for inviting me. But it was great to revisit some of these questions, like about the profession and what's next. And I feel like there's no answers to that, but we need to keep working on it. And sometimes I just forget that. I think that's kind of the main thing that I'm taking, and that we also need to keep revisiting transformational versus transactional.
Yeah,
keep working on self.
Yeah, that's also what I take with me about making clear what is transformational, and try to put that more clearly in words for my customers, actually.
Yeah.
I think that is important for us all as coaches today. Yeah. Yes. Thank you for this morning, and thank you for being here and showing up in my podcast. And to all of you who have listened, I wish you a great continuation of this day, and we hear you again, and hope welcome again. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Om det är någonting jag tar med mig från dagens samtal med Laurie, så är det kanske framförallt detta, att verklig utveckling inte handlar om att hitta bättre svar, utan kanske om att bli en annan typ av människa som kan möta utmaningar på ett nytt sätt, och att få utforska det. Få utforska nya perspektiv med sig själv och sin omvärld. Jag tror att vi människor, vi är kanske byggda för att lösa problem. Vi vill ge råd, det ligger naturligt hos oss. Det var någonting som Laurie underströk i det här samtalet. Vi vill gå in och fixa, hjälpa till. Det ger oss någonting. Men precis som Laurie och jag pratar om, så är det inte där den verkliga förändringen sker. Om vi vill jobba transformativt med våra organisationer, företag, det vill säga förändring som inte går tillbaka utan en utveckling som håller i, som är hållbar, då behöver vi våga stanna upp. Vi behöver hjälpa varandra att reflektera och tänka på djupet för oss själva, och själva upptäcka våra svar. Utveckla vår inre kapacitet. Så frågan vi lämnar dig med, som idag har varit med och lyssnat. Var i ditt ledarskap eller i ditt liv försöker du lösa saker hela tiden åt andra genom att berätta hur de ska göra? Kanske du skulle ha god nytta av att istället utveckla dig själv, jobba med din egen personliga mognad och att låta andra få jobba på sin. Tack för att du lyssnar på Khraft-podden. Vill du ta nästa steg i ditt ledarskap och din utveckling? Fortsätt följa oss. Dela gärna avsnittet med någon annan som behöver höra det här. Vi hörs i nästa avsnitt. Ha en fin dag.